Somebody else been able to get away with too much like that thought, that, but no more. We were not allowed to pray. We pray. Hard, not pray. Hard, no one wants to die. No one wants to die. Both of them. Both of them. Unnecessary. Your life, I call it the way that tries to keep us, lift us, beat us, kill us, and we will fight for us all. It is important, this process. Important work to do. It's the struggle here, the full resource that we need to ensure the safety of the world. Not take on any healthy homes is our choice, our hope. That is where everybody present.
No, he is. Oh, I think the mics are a little off. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see all of you for the Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting. It's a little bit after 4 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Excuse me. Angela, if you can come up to the podium as you usually do. I think most of the updates today are going to be you, Mr. Threat. So if you want to just go ahead and take the seat at the table, that's fine. Angela, if you want to take us through the items for today, and I do have some of the documents that were provided in front of me as well, and myself and Mr. Montano can share if he doesn't have them, and we can just start kind of going down our checklist.
Okay, we want to say greetings to all of the residents of Gordon Plaza. As we know, our reason for being here is to continue to advance this process forward. For those who have attended this meeting or attended this meeting for the very first time, these meetings have been going on for nearly 2 years. Ones that have been on the agenda and ones that have not. So we are picking up from where we left off in the last meeting. I just want to go on record as saying there has already been some communication between the last Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting and this one. So we're going to speak to those things that have already transpired. Not to take additional time in this meeting, but also to continue making sure that everybody's moving in alignment at the same pace, on the same page. So we are going to ask that people give your undivided attention in the meeting, so that we don't have to unnecessarily repeat things that have been repeated several times over. I want to thank all the members of the Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting for being here. We understand that time is valuable. But being here today feels like the most important time because we want to center the lives of the residents of Gordon Plaza. And we're being very adamant about the fact that there are people who still currently to this day live on the landfill. So when we look at the date, March 20th, 2023, on this day, people still live on a hazardous waste landfill. And so we're going to keep that in mind as we proceed forward with the meeting. So we have 3 bucket categories of things we want to attend to. And I want to start off picking up from where we left off with Mr. Joseph Threat. I want to say thank you, Mr. Threat. There's several communications that have gone back and forth this week. So we're going to take them one by one just to make sure that there are things that you or other task force members have seen or have not seen. We're going to surface them up. For the most part, I think we should already know what all those things are. But if we get stuck somewhere, we'll just pause, clarify, and keep moving, okay? All right. So let me go back to the last meeting where we indicated that one of our major efforts right now is making sure that we're attending to issues around the relocation costs. So we sent a communication to all of the members of the task force committee. And the last communication that sent a wave of additional communications were where we left off from the last meeting. We were waiting for an updated draft of 4 documents, and we've received many of these things. So we're going to name them out loud. We were looking for an updated draft of the CEA cooperative endeavor agreement with TCA for the payment of the moving companies for moving expenses, moving trucks, those kinds of things. We were also looking for the operating procedure document in draft form so the residents could review and provide feedback. We were also looking for TCA temporary housing rental assistance CEA, and also the operating procedure document. Some additional communications have come since then, but I want to name that we did receive the draft CEA. Thank you, Mr. Threat, for that. In regards to TCA with clearly there has to be funding in order to move that forward. It is our understanding that this was like a first round phase of money made available for this, and should there need to be additional funds added to it based on need, then we would cross that bridge when we get to it. But we are not waiting until we get to the bridge. We want to stay very attentive in advance, but this gets the process going should people need to get a moving company right away. I want to name that the members of TCA are not here right now. They sent a communication indicating that they were in travel mode. And so since they are in travel mode, they have indicated, since they sent over the operating procedure document, that we could review that and provide them feedback, which we can do during the course of this week. We feel peaceful about that. The next document was the CEA in regards to the temporary housing and rental assistance. And so it's our understanding that that document is still being drafted. There was a document that had been sent over but prior to the last meeting, but they had not been split yet. It's our understanding that TCA is in communication, I believe, with Ms. Brown to finalize that piece and send us over the draft. So we do not have that draft yet. We're still awaiting that draft, CEO Montano. So we'll be looking for that. That precedes then the operating procedure document. We feel like that should not be a complicated thing to bring about, but I do want to name one major concern. And once we address this, then we'll go forward from there. And it's an easy one to resolve, but I think that it needs to be stated out loud because we don't want confusion. All members of the task force committee, please pay attention, but I particularly want to make sure that CEO Montano hears. An hour before coming into this meeting, we received an email, and I don't know if you saw, but I'm going to read it out loud for transparency. There's a problem with it. I'm going to name the problem and name what we have offered as a solution more than one time. This email came from Crystal Hendon, the chief of staff from JP Morrell, indicating, "Good afternoon, all. Just a clarification." Now, this is something we've talked about multiple meetings over. Councilman Morrell's intention was to make rental assistance available to current renters as well as owners that have lived in the property. We are in agreement with that. The problem is it indicates that a note for a minimum of 6 months. The thought process was that if an owner has a delay between the sale of the Gordon Plaza property and availability of the next residence, we should make funding available to assist with housing in the interim. I apologize for the miscommunication dealing with this matter. Please forward any concerns to Julia Zuckerman, copied here for Crystal. Now, I just want to name that since this conversation happened about the temporary moving expenses, it has always been with the understanding that it would be for up to a year. And the reason for that is significant. Not that people want to stay in there up to a year. I want to go on record as saying that. This indicates property for a minimum of 6 months. And so the minimum part is not a problem. We are saying up to a year. And there's more than reasonable justification for that, because truth be told, the residents have said multiple times, had they had their money already, most of them would be gone by now. So they're not trying to twiddle their thumbs and just stay on the property just because, but the reason that there has been an emphasis on ensuring that there is not unnecessary burden put on the residents physically, mentally, or emotionally is because even under the most ideal conditions, and these are not ideal, it is a taxing experience for people to relocate, look for houses, secure the houses, and they can't even start that conversation. I'm gonna say this again. They cannot even start those conversations with people in real ways without money, right? So at the point at which they even make it to the title company to have this conversation and know that they have the money that they need, they then have to pursue looking for a house. And as we examine the market right now, cost of living has not decreased, it's increased. People with money are out purchasing homes every day. And all of the amounts of houses that would have been out here this time 6 months ago aren't necessarily out there now. So people, even when they get their money, are going to have to search for homes, and they're not going to be able to do so under unnecessary pressure. So we just want to name that this email says a minimum of 6 months. So we don't want any confusion about that, because we have always said up to a year. But I want to name, because people in here get all discombobulated sometimes. We want to name that is only for the purpose of giving people the room and space to look for healthy homes of their choice without unnecessary stress, undue stress, because people are ready to move. All they need is the full amount of money to make that possible so that they don't have unnecessary interference. So I'm going to pause for a second, because I just want to make sure we're on the same page and there's no confusion there. This says minimum of 6 months, but I don't want somebody to look up a few days from now or a few months from now talking about, oh, we so sorry, we meant a maximum of 6 months. We're just naming that out loud because this email says minimum of 6 months, and it apologizes for miscommunication. And I don't know nothing about a miscommunication because it's always been up to a year. So I'm gonna pause for a second to see if there's any comment. I'm specifically looking to see A.L. Montano or Mr. Threat. I don't know who can answer that question, but we definitely want that being named, because that email came 1 hour before this meeting started. So clearly it was significant for them to send it over. And we all believe we were on the same page. So.
I mean, what I can tell you is that there's been several different emails trying to figure this out. The specific issue that I think between OCD, the law department, and Councilmember Morell's office is trying to navigate through is the distinction between a renter and an owner.
Mm-hmm.
There's path forwards that we have already laid out if you are a renter, but this is different in that it's an owner moving to another house in that period in between. So that is what I know. I believe those three entities are trying to solve through this final ratification process.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's where the confusion is. I have not seen that email if it just was sent an hour ago.
Mm-hmm.
However, that's what I can contribute to that conversation. If Law and or Joe has to provide or needs to provide any other more clarification, I just know that that is where some of the conversations and the email traffic has been revolving around.
Right, exactly. And I've worked with Tyra Brown from OCD and TCA since our last meeting to try to finalize the drafts and the agreements between the moving expenses and the rental assistance. So we still need to get together. I wish they were here today to speak on their own behalf, but we still need to get together as soon as TCA gets back. And I plan to have a meeting with both of them, try to finalize this. To my understanding from the meetings I've been in, it was a year, but it could be a minimum of 6 months to a year. And I think that's the language we're looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you can just make sure that in that draft CEA that it says up to a year, I don't even think you need to worry about the minimum because, I mean, some people may not even want to be
That's
utilizing
correct.
that for 6 months. So I would
That's
just take
correct.
out the minimum and just make sure it's up to a year. And I think we should be good there.
Yes. So thank you for that. Two quick things about that issue, and then we can keep moving, is that we want to name once again, it feels very important, and the residents have been adamant about this every step of the way, that they are caring for people who are most vulnerable in this process and can fall through the cracks. And so we want to ensure that there's the same way we don't want any unnecessary mental, emotional, or physical burden for the property owners, we don't want that for the renters either. Anybody who has had any challenges transitionally with their homes, it's very destabilizing. It's a very destabilizing process to not know what your housing situation is. And I know that there are some people who treat this and can be very smug-faced about it, but those are normally people who don't have to worry about their housing stability. And so some people will lose track of thinking, oh, these are homeowners, they're getting bought out, they should be okay. But it is very important through this process that the residents, whether they are homeowners or renters, are not in a worse position when this situation is over than they are right now. And it can so easily happen because we understand that when people are on the other side of this, even when they get their funds as an owner, there's somebody right on the other side to take it. And it is very important that we treat this entire process with intention because Ms. Ladwina has made it very clear many, many times over that she ain't trying to see nobody be in the street when this process is over. And we want to name that because that is why folks are fighting the way that they're fighting. And it's imperative that we just name that out loud. We do not want to see any renter or any homeowner fall through the crack in this process. So just naming that. Mr. Threat, do you have anything else that you need to add in regards to those CEAs? Because one of the things I know you inquired about was an estimate number of the households that will eventually move. And the reason we have asked everybody to be attentive to all 67 of the properties is because we're caring for them all, but we know that there are minimally 60 that we're going to have to care for in terms of that process. So I just want to name that.
I understand that. We
Yeah.
won't really know that till the closings are done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, one of my other items on my task list was talking about the taxes,
Yes.
penalties and interest. I talked to Law and the CFO again today.
Yes.
On that list, I think of all the property owners, it was tax penalty interest in amount about 19,707.
Mhm.
The penalties were like 4,572. So I think that I talked to CFO, he said he can waive the penalties.
Yes.
As long as they're not associated with a tax sale, he could not waive the interest. So that's my response, just transferring the information from the chief financial officer.
Okay, couple things. And we want to just name these out loud. So thank you again for sending that document. I want to loop back with CAO Montano. Getting that updated document was significant because so many majority of the residents of Gordon Plaza had already paid their property taxes for 2023. So you see, as soon as we got the updated one, we were just dealing with a handful of people. But I want to name that what we're going to absolutely need, considering that there's a few people who fall into that category with those predatory fees and those predatory interests that have accumulated, is that because of those various columns of the things you're talking about, we need to make sure that the property owners know exactly what you're including in that. And if we could see a draft of that, meaning we already can calculate on the paper, but we don't want to take for granted that they're thinking fees on there are one thing and you guys are thinking something else. Because what we need, what we're going to need at the end of this conversation about the property taxes, the penalty fees being waived, is we need the residents to have their own document, and we'd like to request that those copy of those get forwarded over to Bayou Title so that there's not a concern there. And so the reason we ask for that document is because if there are questions, sometimes things make it onto those paper and they're under question. If a person can just ask a question about it in advance, that would help the process before those letters are generated.
So I'll work with the CFO on a letter to Bio Title about the waiving of the penalties. I'll have to get a breakdown per property of those interest costs.
Yes.
Interest was billed. That's what you're asking.
Yes, because both of those fall into that category. And we would like to see that in a form of a draft before it gets sent over. And the other reason for that, Mr. Threat, is that this all sits on the other side of what transpires with the title company, right? Because we have already communicated to everybody here multiple times. We've already communicated to Bayou Title when they were here, and everybody has been in agreement that at the point at which anybody owes anything, whether it's a deed or something regarding their taxes, that people do not want that to prohibit them from getting their money so they can start the process of looking for a home, which means that the title company is going to have to cut people more than one check. At that time, they're going to have to cut them the difference between what is due to them and what they may have to pay for something that is outstanding. And we don't want anything to interfere with that process, but we also want to make sure that the dollar amounts are correct. And if there's fees that need to be attended to, we just want to address that in draft form before they go over to Bayou Title. And I promise you, for the whole city of New Orleans, as folks have seen, once the residents have had these conversations, they know they're certain about what's going to make this process move that much smoother, because it's already cared for all the things that cause anxiety, called mental, emotional, and physical burden on them. So they're naming it in advance. And I want to thank you for working on those letters, Mr. Threat. If we can just get them in draft form first so that we could look at and see if there's anything that's for question and we don't have any surprises. Do you have any other question or concern or update about that part?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. So with that being said, it is our understanding that because the residents of Gordon Plaza were so adamant that relocation costs and expenses and all these things get cared for, and we got to keep moving through this process this week, Mr. Threat, that by the time this entire window was closed, with the appraiser being able to work on the appraisals, submit the reports, and do all those things, that by the time people received offer letters, they could make a decision about whether they're going to accept the offer letter, right? And so once that happens, people know what situation that they're in, and they can be able to care for that moving forward. So today, we would like to turn to you, Mr. Montano, because I see some representation from the legal team here, but I'm turning to you because it is our understanding when we looked at the agenda, we see that there's updates about the appraisals. So we would like to name that the residents are in a situation now where they can't make any other decisions or any other moves without knowing where they stand in relationship to that. So with that being said, we want to know when the residents are going to receive their appraisals and when they're going to receive their offer letters. And they would like them now.
Yeah, so the city attorney and I had a small discussion about this, and so I'll defer to her legal team to address more specifically about the offer letters based on the latest round of appraisals for the residents and kind of the timing of that, or if you have any other comments related.
And can you all introduce yourselves again to the community.
Corwin St. Raymond here on behalf of the Law Department. Yes, late last week, we received the appraisals. I know that there is a discussion going on between the city attorney's office and Sheriff Garner regarding issuance of offer letters. I do not know what the status of that is. I do think though, as far as submitting offer letters, I believe the city can provide copies of the appraisals to whoever wants one. The appraisals are complete. We're in hand, and we can produce those. Assuming, I mean, I know I'm speaking out of turn because I don't have Denisha's recommendation on this, but I have to assume that the appraisals were generated for you guys.
And just to jump in, one of the things I believe Denisha did highlight earlier today was that she would need permission from the residents whose house was being appraised to be able to provide that information as well.
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah,
Yes,
so to the extent that I guess the long and the short of it is that we do have the appraisals. If a resident wants a copy of their appraisal for their property and they can let us know, we can certainly turn that over.
yeah. So Angela, let's come up with, I think they're all going to want them. So let's come up with a plan. You can work with Andrew so that we can easily figure out how we can get the appraisals to everyone and do it as securely as possible. Cause I know obviously that there might be some, potentially sensitive information in there. So if you can work with Andrew on that, let's get that done ASAP.
Yes, thank you for that. So we're just naming again that the residents do want a copy of their appraisals and they do want the offer letters because they cannot make any decisions about anything without seeing those. And it feels very important that that happen as soon as possible. When it was obvious that there was discussion in the air that no one from the city of New Orleans brought to the attention of the residents about appraisals, the residents inquired about them. And it was brought to our attention that those were received on Wednesday morning, early Wednesday morning, which means that that has even been 3 days of time, which is more than enough time to process this. So we would like to request that those offer letters could be sent out so that residents could review them as soon as possible. And if you all need actual logistical time, they don't see why that cannot happen by this Wednesday. And the reason we believe that that's more than possible is because, the offer letter draft has already been written. All you're doing is dropping in numbers and names. And we also know that when Ms. Sheena got her sample appraisal, it came with an expedited quickness. She got not only the appraisal, but she had the offer letter on top. And that's going to help the process because then the residents will be able to know where they sit in relationship to that and prepare themselves to move forward accordingly. And it's very important that we just name, we appreciate transparency every step of the way, because that's why the residents have advocated so hard to ensure that we could move this along and that they could be able to access the funds that they need to move into their healthy homes of choice. So they have a lot of decisions that they need to make, and they can't even begin making those decisions without having that offer letter. So we will follow up on that, Helena Moreno with Andrew, to ensure that whatever is needed in regards to that, we can move that forward. Okay, so thank you for that. We are now inquiring that and I'm looking back just to make sure. We're now inquiring that we be in a position to do 3 things. One, the residents will look forward to receiving their appraisals and offer letters. And it's a beautiful thing that you can send them to everybody, to the owners of the properties. And we'll work with Andrew to make sure he has everything he needs about that. Because an offer letter is just that, it's an offer letter. The residents will have the right to decide if they're going to accept those or not. And they're looking forward to being able to receive their offer letters. So that's good. Number 2 is, as it relates to all the things connected to TCA, thank you for the communication. Mr. Threat, you've been consistent in that. And so we want to keep that going this week so we can wrap up these documents and wrap up the final pieces. We understand also that you're going to need a little bit of time to talk with them about the temporary housing component, but also with Ms. Brown. The only other thing that the residents wanted to mention about the component with the renters and the homeowners that may choose to use the temporary housing is that once again, ensuring that the operations procedure has the least amount of red tape connected to those. Because TCA made it very clear that how they're going to treat the residents of Gordon Plaza is very different from how they've had to deal with other programs, because the qualifications and all those situations are not the same. It's a different situation. And so we just want to make sure that that can be as smooth a process as possible. So if there's any steps on there that are unnecessary and don't require any expectation for somebody outside that office, that they be eliminated if possible. The last part is we want to be able to establish a Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting where we can pick up and go through the entire process together. We've indicated that we want to just be able to name what parts of the process are already solid and where some things are a little shaky or need to be firmed up. And once again, we understand, CEO Montano, that you indicated that by the time, and I'm gonna look back to you, Mr. Threat, by the time money has to be transferred over in whichever way, or people have to sign off on the money for the checks to be written, that those date turnaround are really important. And so by the time we can walk through this process together and just make sure all things have been accounted for, we will know, and the residents will know, that it'll be safe for them to go forward with the process and communicate whether or not they want to accept an offer, because we understand that that process is going to be important for them thereafter. Has anybody verified or confirmed that Ms. Sheena's property and for agriculture street number 1 has been attended to? Ms. Sheena's property address was incorrect on the document for the CPC, and that needs to be updated. We just want to make sure that there are no problems there.
That was sent back to CPC for
Thank you.
correction, so I'll
Thank
let you know when it's finalized.
Thank you very much. Okay, so can we look at our calendars for the next Gordon Plaza Task Force meeting?
Yes, we can. And just so that I'm clear on the next meeting, obviously, you know, we want all the players here. So TCA here, I'm going to ask Bayou Title to come too, just in case there's any questions for Bayou Title. And so I want to set the meeting, but that's with me saying that I haven't talked to the folks at Bayou Title. So let's set the meeting, and hopefully, you know, they're pretty accommodating. So I think that they'll be able to make it.
We would like that meeting to be as soon as possible.
Okay. Andrew, will you pull up the council calendar, please? Thank you. All right. Give me some dates, Angela.
The residents, it could be, well, hopefully they'll have their letters in their hand by then. So Thursday, Friday.
This Thursday is a council meeting. And I'm out of town on the Friday. Oh, the registrar of voters has it anyway on Friday. What about
Just really quickly, Vice President Moreno.
Yep.
For the 23rd, if we were to aim for a similar time like this, that Thursday, even though there's a council meeting, could it be in the evening time on Thursday?
ordinarily, I would say that it probably wouldn't be a problem,
Mhm.
but this is a meeting where we debate the short-term rental
Mhm.
legislation. And
Mhm.
so I think it's going to be packed and pretty long. So
Okay, what's the next available date that you
what's
have?
the 27th look like? The 31st is the next day the council chambers open?
What did you say about Monday, the 27th?
Oh, that's why, because we start the quarterly
Okay.
budget meetings. That's why.
Okay, Friday, the 31st, what
31st?
time?
What time works for y'all?
Hmm.
Just real quick,
I'm out of town on the 31st for work, but I mean, if Joe can sit in my stead.
Absolutely not. We need you to be present, sir.
Well, I'm out of town that day.
Okay, then we need to choose
And
another day.
I leave Wednesday night. This is for business. Through the 31st.
what about the 3rd?
We'll pause for a second. We'll be patient. We would like for you to be present, sir.
What about the fifth?
Uh,
We have criminal justice in the morning, but what else? At what time? Well, can they be out of here at 4? All right. How
The
about
bro-
how about the 5th at 4?
No, no. I'm working real hard. The lava is boiling behind me. There's no April. No, you know,
Get on the mic, dude. I mean, I'm not here on that Friday, but Councilmember Morel can no. Oh, the registrar of voters. Y'all, sorry. The registrar of voters has it because there's an election.
I'm sorry. What was the last thing you said? I'm sorry.
There's an election on Saturday, so the registrar of voters has the council chamber.
Mhm.
So
What if, we don't
What if
see
we-
this as needing to be a super long
What if
meeting,
we-
so what if we could schedule this meeting in one of the mornings before you start all your committee meetings? We will fit in between these meetings because we cannot go into April.
we could go, what about like, if we could probably do, oh, can't be the 23rd. Oh, but that's right. Okay. Before that meeting. What's on the 27th again? What about 9 AM on the 27th?
On the 27th,
That's good.
9 AM on the 27th, that's March 27th, Monday.
Monday,
March
which is
27th,
a
9
week
a.m.
From today.
Okay.
All right. On the 27th, 9 AM.
Mr. Montano, you're available that day?
I think like everybody else, I have to be a hard stop at 10,
Yep.
but otherwise. I
Look,
can do it.
look, if we can start on time, we're not trying to be here past 10 o'clock either, sir. Mr. Thread, are you available at that time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you all. See you in a week. Wait, don't leave yet. Don't leave. Mr. Morgan, sorry, this isn't a normal meeting. Come on up though. I know you want to make a public comment. So if you could just let Mr. Larry speak, please.